war is bad for business, right? Unless you're producing munitions, right? Tanks, guns.
Dude, it didn't used to be.
It's a new thing.
I was just having this discussion with someone who was saying, well, the war in Ukraine, this is like in 2022, the war in Ukraine is going to be amazing because it's going to create a wartime economy, and all the industries that are adjacent and tangential even to the wartime efforts are going to benefit. Interest rates are going to drop. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be
nonsense,
amazing.
Right?
No, and it hasn't been. It's been disastrous.
No.
But it's also been disastrous for Biden, I feel, like as a president. Usually, generally, the beginnings of a war are the chance for the commander-in-chief to shine. Then the war drags on, people die.
I think that's where we are.
Yeah, and the media sinks its teeth into it and creates
a new war.
We need a new war. So what is that? I mean, this has nothing to do with business.
No.
But who is the new war? I have thoughts.
Yeah.
I have
What are your
thoughts.
thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I have thoughts. I thought the thoughts were going to be Iran.
Mm-hmm.
I was pretty sure because Iran has all these proxies, and obviously with the Houthis in North Africa against the Saudi Arabians, trying to control the flow of commerce through these straits. It just seemed logical that we pivot away from Ukraine to the Iranians and their proxies.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't appear like that is, I think it flared up, and it's kind of like, that.
So what's next? Switzerland?
If I had to guess, no, not Switzerland. If I had to guess, I would say the whole Israel-Gaza thing is going to present a tremendous amount of opportunity for the world. And so from this horrible event on October 7th, 2023, hopefully will come a rebuilding of Gaza. And I think it presents an interesting opportunity for U.S. troops to be present. Biden has said that they're sending, thousands of troops, but the boots will never touch the ground. And that's like the deal with the Israelis. But I have a sneaking suspicion that instead of the Israelis, and how they kind of police the West Bank, I think it's going to be the U.S. And the U.S. is going to go into Gaza.
And how did Jordan and Syria and Egypt feel about that?
Well, I think Egypt feels fine so as long as Palestinians don't move into their country. Because Palestinians have been known to kind of stir up dust, right? I think King Abdullah of Jordan isn't very happy with his situation. So they're fine donating money. The Qataris as well. They're fine donating money. They're fine like dropping humanitarian aid. But I don't think anyone's very interested in taking in refugees. But we'll see. We'll see. But listen, this is behind the business. This is behind the business.
Not behind the politics.
All right, I give up. I give up. It's amateur hour over here at Behind the Business.
Whose phone is that? Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing about all this international talk, right? Politics and war.
Yeah.
Is that the majority of crypto is held, purchased, sold outside the United States.
Is that right?
It is. And makes me wonder how much of that is tied into some of these conflicts that are going on outside the U.S. What's happening today, it's super different. A year ago, or maybe it was a few years ago now, right? During COVID, you've got crypto taking center stage as the asset du jour, right?
Okay.
People got so excited.
What year was this?
Must have been during COVID. Must have been 2021.
Okay.
Maybe not 2022. Maybe it was 2020 and 2021.
Yeah.
Right. That was probably kind of the run up and the peak last time. So maybe 3 years ago. And it seemed like the same exact thing is repeating again. You've got tech stocks running and crypto chasing. And crypto again is hitting new all-time highs. And it's super interesting because this time you don't have the government printing money. right? We don't have the government throwing billions and trillions of dollars out of helicopters at the average person on Main Street.
And that was the ERC, the PPP, the
all of
stimulus,
that, the stimmies, right?
the
The stimmy checks that went into their Coinbase accounts and the Robinhood.
Right.
We don't have that today. And so it makes you wonder, sure, I mean, they've got some Bitcoin ETFs approved. So what? I mean, yeah, that creates some demand. But you've got this asset that's supposed to represent the little guy, right? This is...
Wait, are you saying Bitcoin represents the little guy?
I think so.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I think
it did at one point.
I had recently walked into a bicycle shop, and it's a bicycle repair shop mostly, repairing electric bikes. And the owner of the shop is wearing a Bitcoin hat. I think Bitcoin and crypto, I think even though largely nonsense, they represent a nice middle finger to the establishment from people who feel left behind. And as an investor, I think I have to appreciate that, and you should appreciate that. Everyone is now appreciating that because it doesn't really matter whether it has utility or not. If enough people believe that this is the way that you turn your middle finger to the establishment, it's going to work, right? No different than gold did at the turn of the 20th century, when people were scared of what was happening with revolutions around the world. They hoarded gold and diamonds. Today, they have other ways of doing that. And so they're essentially saying, hey, I'm worried about our system. I'm worried about the governments I see around the world running deficits, spending way too much, spending more than they have. Worried about inflation ravaging the average person, the cost of assets, right? From your house to your car to anything that you want to own today, seems unaffordable for the average person. And it's funny, Robert Kroc was just walking around talking about that, saying, stop feeling sad for yourself. Go out and find a way to make more money.
Yeah.
But he's also in the same breath saying, and buy some crypto. So it seems like a silly thing not to have at least 5 to 10% of your net worth today tied up in some of these digital assets.
What are the digital assets, the digital asset du jour apart from Bitcoin?
I think besides Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Yeah. I hear a lot about XRP. What's that?
I don't know. XRP is, I forgot what it's called, but there's so many of these little coins out there. Some people feel strongly about one, some about the other. I think as an average person, average investor, it doesn't make much sense to hold anything other than some of the top, 3, 4, or 5 coins that are out there. It's just too risky. And you can do that fairly simply. You could just go on coinmarketcap.com and take a look at what's listed there. There are some easy ways to buy Bitcoin, Ethereum. Bitcoin, you've got ETFs now. And Ethereum can still be bought in one of these grayscale trusts. I think the ticker symbol is ETHE.
Yeah.
So that's what I own. That's what I would do.
That's what I own, right?
Listen, I think it's one of those things where the establishment, the crypto establishment's telling everyone that it's not your wallet, not your Bitcoin. I think that's a super dumb argument. I mean, what kind of average person's supposed to deal with these passphrases, saving them on their computer that's going to get lost? Make your dog memorize your passphrase, put it in some sort of deposit box. I mean, this is nonsense. Until they come up with better technology for this, the average person's much better off buying crypto assets through
an index fund
through
or something.
A real financial instrument.
Okay.
And they want to scare you by saying, when the world ends, the people holding their Bitcoin are going to be better off. Yeah, and when the electricity's off, what the fuck are they going to do? Right?
Reminds me of...
That's so dumb.
It reminds me of people carrying TVs when they had that thing in Louisiana Where the,
Oh, yeah.
Where the
Hurricane Katrina.
where the what do you call it? The levees broke and all the ocean water is pouring in and people are looting Best Buy. They're carrying TVs. You're like, where are you going to plug it in? But I get that with Bitcoin.
That's such an interesting movement, and it's a global one because this is not based in the US.
That's the thing. I read an article about the financing of wars specifically. And Finland, I think, was doing a study on Russia's wartime procurement. I don't know if you saw this article.
No.
And so they're making estimates about what their wartime economy is pumping out insofar as it relates to their wartime assets. Tanks, planes, ammo, guns, those types of things. And they're like, well, we underestimated Russia and the sanctions, because the U.S. puts these sanctions on Russia and its proxies, right? The people it trades with. Turns out Russia, China, and India have been trading just fine, evading
guns.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty wild. And so you wonder, right? Like if the movement of currency across countries shows up, right, on these technologies that the U.S. monitors closely, wire transfers, etc. Well, there's other ways to exchange money. I think Russia has figured out, in large part, that you can manipulate, and people may not want to hear this, but manipulate digital currencies in their favor, right? It's not about Goldman Sachs taking both sides and slicing off those little penny here, penny there, and soon it adds up, to $1 billion to their top line. I think for Russia and some of these other countries where
their currencies are shit, right? Trash.
So they're turning to these digital currencies that are easily manipulatable.
Yep. Yeah, and they're probably doing a great job, right? I mean, I think Putin
Easily
is a proud
manipulated.
oil trader, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He crushes.
He front runs
He crushes
his own purchases and sales of petroleum.
Yeah, absolutely.
He makes a lot of money doing it.
And listen, the Saudi Arabians are, they're not stupid either.
No.
Right? Because the U.S. tries to push Saudi Arabia around with respect to how much petrol they'll pump and barrel, right? But the truth is that since Trump has exited office, Putin has cozied up to bin Salman in Saudi Arabia, and they have their own little. What do you call it going on? Their own little petroleum gang.
OPEC Plus.
OPEC Plus, yeah, absolutely.
Shout out to Lev.
Shout out to the big brain, to the human manifestation of AI.
Yeah. But I think Lev probably would agree that young people, meaning people under the age of 30 in the United States,
right,
feel a little bit angry over the last decade, right? Since they were 20 years old up to now, they feel a little bit left behind.
Well, I mean, if they miss their entrance into getting a mortgage,
The housing market.
yeah.
Oh, they sure did.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of them did.
Yeah. Now a mortgage is unaffordable.
Right. And their rent is skyrocketing.
Out of control.
And so they're not looking at the S&P 500 going, oh, I think a 10% return could really do me some good here.
Yeah.
They don't think that's going to help. So they're looking for assets that might accelerate, right, their entry into the middle class, like their parents once hoped for them.
Right.
And that seems out of reach. So they're looking at Bitcoin going, well, here's an asset that's returning, 50 to 100% per year. That might actually help me buy a house. That might help me secure a future for my children.
Yeah.
And sure, we sit here and we doubt it. We say it's a bunch of nonsense money, a bunch of funny money. They told us there was going to be utility. When was that? 3 years ago? They gave me this hope. And I think I told you guys about this, right? I told my friends, right? Wow, Ethereum is going to change our lives. Our kids are going to be playing video games with digital currencies. So when I give my son
Instead of
V-Bucks or Robux, right? Or those V-Bucks and Robux are going to be priced in some sort of currency,
right?
So that they can go up and down. And then the parents are going to get value. And then the people who are playing the game are going to share in the revenues of that game.
I also thought when you buy something on a game,
It's going to be on a ledger.
it would be on a ledger, it would be a
Amazing.
digital contract. You'd own that. And you could take that suit of armor from one game to another.
That portability.
The
That was
portability.
Didn't that sound amazing?
And it was a fucking lie.
It is a lie.
was
and
a
they
lie.
can't do it. And the games suck.
I was on a phone call this morning. This is tangentially related.
No.
And it was a guy who builds sales funnels. And he was saying, well, yeah, I was asking him, like, how do you know my friend? He goes, oh, yeah, we were selling land in the metaverse. And I was like, I was ready to click a button, like eject from this call.
Eject.
Because it was all about that.
Snoop Dogg had land in the metaverse.
Yeah. People were buying land in the metaverse. And I remember thinking about it going, I don't have FOMO. Fuck these people. These people are morons. What was the boat thing called? People were buying JPEGs.
You're talking about NFTs?
Yeah. It was
OpenSea.
It was OpenSea, but it was like the yacht club. It was like the ape yacht.
Bored Ape Yacht
Bored
Club.
Ape Yacht Club.
That was a Gary Vee thing. I think he got people into buying the
How that guy
apes or
wasn't indicted, I'll never understand.
I mean, tremendous.
You pump up these assets. And this kind of like goes back to what I'm saying about Russia is you pump these assets, you go on a podcast and you're like XRP, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Alpha Zero. You start talking about these lesser
It's
known.
Olive Zero.
What did
Don't
I say?
insult the great people. Of
I
this
said Olive
coin.
Zero.
You call it Alpha.
Oh, sorry. I meant Aleph. ALEPH, I think.
Yes.
Olive Zero. But they pump these coins, right? Kind of like that one pastor in Colorado. Well, God told me I had to start this coin. And then what else did he tell you? He told me I needed to remodel my house. And you're like, what? So it's like, a lot of this stuff being unregulated, it is a bit of the wild, wild west. It reminds me a lot of
Tulips or
pre-Civil War. So pre-Civil War United States, it wasn't even really, but pre-Civil War United States, the states would print their own currency. It was a fucking mess. You had all these states with their own currencies, and there was a lot of counterfeiting, and it's like, well, what do we fucking do?
it sounds like Italy having its own currency.
Estonia.
Yeah.
What is Estonia? Well, they're now using the euro, but this reminds me of how ultimately in the end, the United States wins the Civil War. One currency is adopted and it's backed by gold. I feel like that whole like roll up reminds me a lot of Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Yeah. Bitcoin's actually backed by math. And then the other ones are backed by nothing.
Yeah.
Which is great.
I don't want to go to a Javier's where my waitress is telling me that her husband has started a digital coin and he's like
a digital
coin fund and it's worth like 100 billion. I don't want to hear that stuff.
But what's interesting, so all of these, what I would call value propositions, are in the toilet. And yet the asset prices are at new all-time highs. And what that tells me is that there's more to this story than meets the eye. And that's an international story.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not about America, right? It's about the rest of the world. It's super interesting because it tells you that the people in China and Bulgaria.
Oh, I'm
and
not Chinese.
Sudan.
I'm from Singapore. Sorry, sir.
That's a fancy Chinese.
Yeah, that's a fancy. Yeah.
I think we just saw some comedian, right?
Oh, no, I'm talking about the comedian. I'm talking about the guy who heads one of these exchanges who's from Singapore.
Oh, yeah.
And was on the Hill testifying.
Ooh.
He's like,
oh, yeah.
yeah. No. I'm from Singapore.
I'm talking about Jing Summers or something. She's a great comedian.
I'm not familiar.
She's fantastic.
But anyway, you have this.
You're Chinese? No, I'm from Singapore.
Yeah.
I started making fun of her. Yeah, crypto is a mess, a hot mess. But as an investor, whether you're 20 years old, 30 years old, 40 years old, or 70 years old, you would be remiss not to have a certain percentage of your assets.
What's that percentage again?
As a responsible small business owner in today's world, I recommend having at least 5% of your assets in some kind of crypto securities, whether that be ETFs or the actual coins themselves. And really, you should be focusing on the two top coins, right, which are Bitcoin and Ethereum, right? And you can do that through the Grayscale products or the new BlackRock and Van Eck products. But if you're older, let's say 40, 50, 60 years old, 5% probably makes a lot of sense for your portfolio, right? An allocation to these funds. But if you're younger and you're in your 20s and 30s, I think 10 to 15% doesn't sound crazy. It's the best performing asset of the last decade and more.
So explain why, and I know we're out of time. We've got like 2 minutes left, but explain real quick about time horizons and how it relates back to investment portfolios and like the allocations of assets. You got 2 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, time horizon is just something that's related to our age, right? When you're in your 20s and 30s, your time horizon is 50, 60, 70 years. And that just means that you can handle a lot of risk. Because if you lose 50% of your money, you've got enough time for those assets to double again to get back to break even. Mm-hmm. But imagine if you're in your 70s and tomorrow you lose 50% of your holdings, right? Of the value. Do you have enough time for those assets to double again? Mm-hmm. That could take a decade. That could take 5 years. That could take 15 years. We don't know, but it's too much risk for someone in that position. Unless they don't need these assets to live on, or their spouse doesn't need them to live on after they're passing. So time horizon is very important in deciding what your asset allocation should be, right? How much of your portfolio should be in real estate, in crypto, in traditional assets like stocks and bonds.
Yeah. I think it's important. I think it relates back to business owners as well. And I know we're kind of out of time, but depending on your age and your time horizon, you can be aggressive. And you can be aggressive with your investment portfolio and sort of like what you're willing to lose. Because that's what it is, right? Investment time horizon has a lot to do with what you're willing to lose.
That makes it kind of sound like gambling. But yeah.
Well, yeah. But I think as you get older, you become more risk averse because not only are you becoming more conservative in general, finding God and those types of things, kids and wanting to protect what you have for the next generation, but also just because you're so scared to lose what you worked so hard to create. I think it just reminds me a lot of one of our business coaches saying to me, what percent, as a business owner, what percent of your annual revenue should be directed towards marketing? Because marketing reminds me a lot of crypto, these asset classes or whatever that have potentially tremendous upside, but also tremendous downside. And I think as you are a younger business, you should be pushing more towards doubling down on marketing of any type, right? Be it direct mail, junk mail, email marketing, digital marketing, organic SEO marketing, Facebook, TikTok, Google, PPC, display, right? Just doing everything and finding out what works for your base, your client base. And then as you get older, you start to pare back from that aggressive spending routine, right? And you're not willing to bet so aggressively on your own marketing, maybe. I think it reminds me a lot of crypto. And I think the story, and this is, we can end it here, but the anecdote is that book that we read recently about those two PhDs.
Yeah, Kahneman and Tversky.
Yeah. We'll put the link down in the description, but I think it was a brilliant book, and they won the Nobel Prize together.
People hate losing.
Yes.
2.5 times as much as they like winning.
People hate losing 2.5 times more than they like winning. And I think when we just got back from Vegas, and we would walk by these tables and would say $100 minimum for blackjack or something like that. And I would look at you and you would look at me and it'd be like, the idea of winning $500 doesn't sound interesting. The idea of winning $10,000, it's a story to go home and tell your wife. The idea of losing $10,000, it's calamitous. It's disastrous. If I lost $10,000,
your wife would be so mad.
She would hate me 2.5 times more than if I made 10,000. So let that be a lesson to people. Yeah, let that be a lesson to young people and young business owners, right? With their investment allocations, right? In their portfolio, right? If you're young, do what Dean said. Double down on these aggressive bets. It's been the best performing asset class in the last decade, right? Beating the equity markets handily.
Easily. And PSA to small business owners, we look at your bank statements every hour of every day. We know exactly what you're doing. And we happen to run a lending institution. Stop running your Coinbase and crypto transactions through your business bank accounts.
Yeah, it's weird.
That looks about the same as running your casino winnings and losses through your business bank accounts.
We don't want to see Ripple XRP in your bank statements.
Please stop.
Yeah. Clean up right? Your bank statements. Separate your personal from your business. That's the PSA. And we're out. We're out. We'll see you guys next time.
Deuces.
Adios.
You look like Lennon inside that box.
Jesus Christ.
Translucent.